Aloha, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the City and County of Honolulu's webinar introducing the National Standards for the Physical Inspection of Real Estate, or NSPIRE. I appreciate everyone making the time to be here today to learn about the new standards and requirements expected from landlords. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website for later viewing. The website is www.honolulu.gov/DCS/Inspire. My name is Adam Lefebvre, and I will be serving as the moderator for this event. I work for the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Community Services as the Public Information Officer. Today's session will feature a number of panelists, all with the City and County of Honolulu. They are Carrie Kaneshiro, our Housing Assistance Program Administrator. Carrie Kaneshiro has been with the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Community Services since 2003. Carrie was born in Honolulu, is a graduate of Mililani High School. He's been with the Rental Administrator Program since 2023, and prior to that was a housing specialist, team leader, and the operations supervisor. We also have Alan Tamanaha, a Rehab Loan Programs Administrator. Alan Tamanaha has been with the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Community Services as the Rehabilitation Loan Branch Chief since 2011. Alan was born and raised in Maui, graduated from Baldwin High School and the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Prior to the city, Alan served as the U.S. Air Force and has over 21 years of private sector experience, primarily in banking and financial services industry. We also have Glenn Ocampo, Section 8 Acting Operations Supervisor. As the acting operations supervisor for NSPIRE, he manages administrative tasks and makes sure we follow all the necessary rules. This allows him to ensure everything runs smoothly and meets NSPIRE standards. Also on the call today, we have Stephen Rosa, Section 8 Inspections Supervisor. Stephen was born and raised in Honolulu and is a graduate of Waipahu High School. He's been with the City and County of Honolulu since July 7th, 1987, and has been involved in design and construction for over 35 years. He's been a supervisor with the Department of Community Services Section 8 branch for more than 5 years and a Section 8 inspector before becoming a supervisor. We also have Likeke Gersaba, a Section 8 inspector. Likeke Gersaba has been with the City and County of Honolulu's Department of Community Services since 2020. Born in Honolulu, he's a graduate of Kalaheo High School. 4 years as an Urban Rehabilitation Inspector 1, and prior to that, he was a Logistics Specialist Emergency Management Assistance Compact Coordinator for the state of Hawaii. And we also have with us today Taimane Pasi, a supervisor for the Department of Community Services Work Hawaii Division Rent to Work program. In relation to the new NSPIRE guidelines, the Rent to Work program also federally funded by HUD, meaning that we too need to make sure that we are placing families into decent, safe, and sanitary housing. The Rent to Work program will be in compliance with the new NSPIRE standards effective July 1st, 2024. These are our panelists for today, but I'd like to take this opportunity to go over a few important things to know before we start. Because of the size of this conference, all attendees' microphones and webcams have been disabled. We've collected a lot of questions from registrants on various topics. However, if during the training session you'd like to ask a question of the presenters and the panelists, we ask that you direct your questions to the chat feature on the bottom right portion of your screen in WebEx. You may direct your questions to all panelists in the chat using that function to ensure your question is seen. We have staff monitoring the chat room and will be gathering your questions as they arrive and forwarding them to the presenters and panelists. We expect this webinar to take about an hour. Presenters and panelists will get to as many questions as we can during the Q&A portion of this training, time permitting. Please take a second to familiarize yourself with the chat feature now. At this time, I'd like to turn the stage over to Carrie Kaneshiro, our Housing Assistance Program Administrator, to give a brief overview of the new national standards for the physical inspection of real estate, or NSPIRE. Carrie?
Thank you, Adam. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. To begin at the beginning, what is NSPIRE? So as Adam said, NSPIRE is an acronym. It stands for the National Standards for the Physical Inspection of Real Estate. It's a new physical inspection model designed to promote HUD's goal of reducing health and safety hazards in the home. To achieve this goal, NSPIRE prioritizes the condition of dwelling units rather than their cosmetic features. NSPIRE also aligns multiple HUD programs to a single set of inspection standards so that the same expectations of housing quality can be achieved across HUD programs. Just to say a little bit more about that, in the past, HUD had a standard for public housing, and they had a different standard for the Section 8 program, for the Housing Choice Voucher program, excuse me. So there's a single standard now. After a 2-year development process, HUD unveiled the final NSPIRE standard in the summer of 2023. The City and County of Honolulu will begin to implement the NSPIRE standard on July 1, 2024 to coincide with the start of the city's new fiscal year. NSPIRE makes key improvements to inspections to increase their objectivity, accuracy, and consistency. Under NSPIRE, inspections are based on deficiency indicators to ensure that deficiencies cited by inspectors accurately reflect substandard conditions within a property. Each inspection standard is supported by a rationale, which is a clear and concise explanation of potential risks a deficiency presents. HUD determined that while its legacy inspections models were well-intentioned in design, neither model, the public housing model and the UCV model, neither model currently aligns with HUD's priorities or the state of the housing industry. Further, while a majority of the properties are in compliance with HUD standards, NSPIRE will provide improved capabilities to detect and identify those properties that are not. Under NSPIRE, HUD aims to safeguard affordable housing for American families and promote the health and safety of residents living in HUD-assisted dwellings. And with that, I'll turn it over to our team to talk about the NSPIRE standards in detail.
Mahalo, Carrie. So actually, I'm going to turn it back over to you. We're going to start answering our questions at this time. We have a few questions that are already rolling in, and I would like to remind our attendees who are watching the webinar today to take a look at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and familiarize yourself with the chat feature of this WebEx webinar. And you can ask your questions there, either by sending your questions to everyone or to all panelists, and we have staff monitoring that at this time. But first, Carrie, I'd like to ask the first question for you. I was wondering, what specific ways does NSPIRE differ from the old Housing Quality Standards, or HQS?
Okay, that's a great question. And if any of my colleagues want to chime in, feel free to. So this is what the NSPIRE standard looks like. You can see it's a really big thing, and it's pretty dense and difficult reading, actually. But one of the ways in which NSPIRE differs from HQS is in the way the standards are organized. So it's very clearly organized. So inspectable units, inspectable areas in a unit are divided by inside, outside, and units. So there's a clear kind of demarcation of the deficiency based on where the deficiency is. And there's also a very clear explanation of the time frame in which deficiencies have to be corrected. And the time frames are connected to the severity or the danger, the threat that is posed by a deficiency. And so those four levels are life-threatening deficiencies, severe deficiencies, moderate, and low. And each one has a different time frame where it has to be corrected. So a life-threatening deficiency needs to be corrected within 24 hours. A severe deficiency between 24 hours and 30 days. Moderate is 30 days, and low is within 60 days. So all of this stuff is clearly explained in the regulations. Some examples of the kinds of things that the NSPIRE guideline requires the inspectors to look for. For example, in bedrooms, there has to be a privacy guard for the shower, for the kitchen space and storage. If the kitchen lacks space for counters or cabinets, there'll be a deficiency. For the kitchen appliances, if the refrigerator is missing or the stove is missing, there'll be a deficiency. So every room in the unit, there are certain expectations, and these are codified in the NSPIRE guidelines. Um, Practically speaking, I think the biggest difference between HQS and NSPIRE is that there are stricter requirements for smoke detectors, and not just smoke detectors, but also for carbon monoxide detectors. So there was a carbon monoxide carbon monoxide detector requirement that went into effect in December of 2022. In addition to that, the smoke detector standards have been tightened so that every sleeping area needs a smoke detector, and also the areas outside or adjacent to the sleeping area need a smoke detector. So at a minimum, a one-bedroom apartment would need 2 smoke detectors. Uh, there's more, but the smoke detector requirements are a big change over the previous inspection standards.
Mahalo, Carrie, for that in-depth response. I have the next question now that I'm going to direct to Stephen Rosa. Stephen, when does the new standard go into effect?
Okay. New. Can you folks hear me?
We can hear you, though it's a little soft. If you could speak a little closer to the microphone.
Okay, I'll do that. How's that?
Better.
Okay. The new standard is starting on July 1st, 2024. Units inspected with HQS standards will need to comply with HQS. Units which started with HQS standards uh, will be processed for inspection should continue until completion, even after July 1st. Yeah, so if you started with an HQS inspection, just because July 1st rolls around doesn't mean you're going to switch over to NSPIRE. It will finish off in the HQS, and then all new NSPIRE inspections would take place in July 1st.
Mahalo, Stephen. My next question I'm going to direct to Likeke Gersaba. Likeke, why is the standard changing?
So there are many reasons why the standard is changing, but the main one is that the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development requires public housing agencies to adopt this new standard. And along with the other agencies, we're given a compliance window, as Carrie discussed earlier, and will be effective July 1st with the city's new fiscal year.
Mahalo, Likeke. My next question I'd like to direct to Glenn Ocampo. Glenn, what happens if the owner doesn't conform to the new standard?
Thanks, Adam. When a unit fails the NSPIRE inspection for items that are the landlord's responsibility, the owner will be given time to correct the deficiency based on the severity. A life-threatening deficiency will be given 24 hours, while less severity deficiencies may be corrected over a longer period of time. Program rules requires public housing agencies to halt housing assistance payments if deficiencies are not corrected within the specified time frame, and the agency must terminate or cancel the housing assistance payments contracts after 30 days without a half payment. In some cases, families may be required to move in order to continue to receive assistance under the program.
Mahalo, Glenn. My next question I'd like to pose to Alan Tamanaha. Alan, are there more changes planned for the future?
Yes, Adam. As of now, on December 31st, 2024, the smoke alarms will need to have tamper-proof batteries. So the batteries will have to be built in. You can't remove the batteries from the older smoke alarms. So rest assured, any more changes that may come in the future, your Section 8 office will promptly communicate all changes. So, okay, thank you.
I appreciate that, Alan. Carrie, I'd like to come back to you for this next question. Is there a mold standard?
There is. The standard identifies mold-like substances. The inspector, when he goes out, may not be able to tell, if it's mold or not, and will be even less in a position to determine whether the mold is a hazard or not a hazard. So there's a standard for mold-like substances, something that has the appearance of mold. I'll just read what it says. A mold-like substance can include regular or irregular patches or spots on the surfaces that can be colored differently than surfaces. Coloration can be white, green, yellow, gray, brown, or black, and can be raised from the surface and are generally composed of minute filaments. A mold-like substance can appear fuzzy or cottony, and a musty or earthy odor can be associated with it. Mold-like substance would include what is often identified as mildew. Small patches, generally on non-porous surfaces, and dusty, friable when dry. Mildew is generally a thin surface growth that can be wiped off easily. Note that algae is not a mold-like substance. Algae are grass green. A unit which fails the NSPIRE inspection due to the presence of a mold-like substance will have 30 days to correct it. The severity level of the mold-like substance is considered moderate severity. End quote.
Thanks, Gary. My next question I'm going to direct to Stephen Rosa. Stephen, I understand that units used to be pass-fail. Do units still pass-fail under these new inspection guidelines?
The quick answer we have few little different.
I'm sorry, Stephen, we're having a hard time hearing you. Maybe I could pass this question on to somebody else while we address your audio issues. Can anybody else take this question?
I'll take it. Do units pass-fail? That's a good question. The answer is, for the HCV program, yes. The units will either pass or fail. What is a little confusing, if you go to the NSPIRE website on HUD's web pages, is that the website talks about a scoring system. The scoring system is exclusive to the public housing programs that HUD manages. For the Housing Choice Voucher Program, it's still pass-fail. There's no score assigned to a unit.
Got it. I appreciate that, Carrie and Stephen. My next question I'd like to pose to Likeke Gersaba. Likeke, is it just the city and county of Honolulu that's affected by this?
No, all public housing agencies in the state and across the country are implementing the NSPIRE to be in compliance with HUD regulations.
Thanks, Likeke. That makes it simple. My next question.
Just say one. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sure
I'm
thing,
going
Carrie.
to add one thing about that, because just to prevent confusion, as Lakeke said earlier, our different public housing agencies were given a compliance window to implement NSPIRE. So not all of the agencies within the state of Hawaii are implementing NSPIRE at the same time. So just because the standard already went into effect for, let's say, the Hawaii Public Housing Agency, it doesn't mean that it went into effect the same time for us. I know, for example, that Maui County is implementing it September 1 of this year. So all agencies that administer these HUD programs have to comply with NSPIRE, but they're not all implementing NSPIRE at the same time. We're implementing it July 1 because it made sense to do that, because that's when the new fiscal year starts for the city.
That's good to know. Thanks for the context, Carrie. Glenn Ocampo, I have a question for you. Well, where can owners get help about this? Glenn?
Yeah, we have a dedicated website that we created. It's the HTTPS website is provided on the documentation that was provided, letters that were sent out previously. And on there, you can find resources and contact information for support on the NSPIRE webpage. And visit that NSPIRE for webpage to get some resource information. And you can also use our QR code to take you directly to that website. And we also have a dedicated hotline, NSPIRE hotline. and that is 808-768-7066. So if you have any question or comments, you can call that number to leave a message. And there's more information about tips and about smoke alarms. We have, I guess, a link there to take you to the American Red Cross website.
Thanks, Glenn. And for those who are watching this webinar afterwards, that website is www.honolulu.gov/DCS. That's Department of Community Services, DCS/Inspire. That's NSPIRE. So www.honolulu.gov/DCS/Inspire. And I should note that a lot of this information is available on that website already. Many of the questions that have been asked, we have already added to our frequently asked questions portion of that website. So if you wanted to refresh yourself on the answers to any of these questions, we will be updating that website as well. This video, for example, will be made available on that website after we finish the webinar. So later you'll be able to go back and rewatch this webinar to get answers to your questions. We have a few questions that have come in from the audience chat here today that I wanted to make sure to get to. So to whichever of our panelists is most appropriate to answer this question, the first question I have is, will these standards and regulations be available in their entirety for people to download? I assume on the website, perhaps. We'll make a link available for that. Can anyone confirm that for me?
Yes, the Inspire standard is on HUD's website. Like I was saying, it's quite large, but that's where I got it on the website. So go to HUD's website. They have a search feature. Just type Inspire, NSPIRE, and it'll lead you to the Inspire splash page, and you'll see a lot of resources there. The standard is there. You can link to it and download it.
Got it. That'll be a great resource, especially if it's a digital copy. You can just hit Control F to search for your specific question. Maybe you can find it in the document if it's digital that way. I appreciate that, Carrie. The next question that I wanted to ask to anyone who might be the most appropriate person for this one, one of our attendees today read that the Inspire standards are effective July 1st, 2024, and we mentioned that that's when we're going to make it effective here in Honolulu. Carbon monoxide detection is only for mainland with chimneys, or also in Hawaii for chimneys. So I guess the question is, will the carbon monoxide detectors be required also here in Hawaii? We know that it's required on the mainland. Chimneys are less common here. Is it also required here?
Steve or Lekeke, did you want to take that, or shall I?
Oh, yes. So the carbon monoxide detectors are required. I believe starting in July last year, it was required already for the attached garages or enclosed attached garages to the units, and anything with gas appliances, and that will be it. And if they have a chimney, of course. Any fuel burning source, yes.
I appreciate that, Lekeke. Thank you. So one of our attendees owns a 10-unit fire-resistant concrete building. Only 2 of the units are Section 8, but do they have to upgrade the smoke alarms in all 10 units?
No, they wouldn't. We're only inspecting the inside of that particular unit. But if there's smoke detectors located outside of the unit in the common areas, those would need to be updated.
Thank you, Lekeke. The next one, I think we may have touched on this one before, but the question is, are there guidelines about the locations of smoke detectors? Carrie, I think you were talking about this one earlier.
Yeah, and I think Lekeke is the most expert person to speak on this, actually.
So, in fact, all landlords and tenants, or just the landlords and property managers, should have got a letter sent to them back in September, stating the new requirement in October for the new smoke detector requirements in the bedrooms, how Carrie was saying, and inside of the exterior of the bedrooms itself. But if you go on the NSPIRE website, there is PDF forms on top of there that state the locations and areas, because depending on the location, as we just announced, that'll determine on the proper placement. And there is instructions on top of the smoke detectors itself on how to place it and where.
Mahalo, Likeke. And while we're on the subject of smoke detectors, do bathrooms need to have smoke detectors?
Unless you're sleeping in a bathroom, then no.
Well, maybe sometimes. The next question I have for anyone who's the most appropriate to answer, can we please get some more details on the specifics for the requirements of the smoke detectors? Are we going to, I think there are some documents that we have available that we can probably put on the website that will give you some pictures, including the measurements, and that may be the best way to answer this question. That way you can see for yourself exactly how far away from the corner of the wall you need to place it, how far away from doorways, etc. We can make that available on the website for you to check out afterwards. But is there anything that any of our panelists would like to add?
KK, you might want to go ahead and touch on the sealed 10-year lithium-ion battery smoke detector.
So like how Alan was introducing the new requirements as of 2024, starting December, if you're not hardwired into your system, meaning all smoke detectors are connected, hardwired, then you have to buy the 10-year lithium built-in battery type of smoke detector. So as of December, any 9-volt battery operated smoke detectors will be cited as a deficiency and will fail and will be a 24-hour notice because it's a health and safety.
Thank you, Likeke.
Mahalo. When does a home actually need a carbon monoxide detector versus just smoke detectors? The attendee who asked this question says that their home does not have a garage attached and has a parking lot. Does that mean there's no need for a carbon monoxide detector and only smoke detectors are needed?
Yes, you're correct. Only the smoke detector is required in the sleeping rooms and directly outside the sleeping room. No carbon monoxide detector is needed because you don't have a few burning appliance or an attached garage or chimney.
Got it. So the next attendee installed a new carbon monoxide detector in their 395 square foot apartment last October 2023. They were wondering if they heard correctly that they now need 2 carbon monoxide smoke alarms in 1-bedroom apartment. That sounds like 2 different things. The carbon monoxide detector and the smoke detector are 2 different things. Is that correct?
Sorry. So yes, that's 2 different requirements. But if you have a single floor and you don't have an upstairs unit, then you only need 1 carbon monoxide detector downstairs. If there's 2nd floor, then you need 1 upstairs and downstairs.
Mahalo. The next attendee receives Section 8 and lives in a 14-unit apartment complex. They're the only Section 8 unit. Do the rest of the units need to comply with NSPIRE's smoke detector and other requirements?
Yeah, we just sort of answered that only the unit that is being subsidized would be required to follow our NSPIRE requirements, not the rest of the building.
I appreciate that, Stephen. The next attendee asks if the unit has a hot wire smoke detector, but with a removable backup battery, is that accepted?
Yes, that is correct. That would be considered a hardwired smoke detector, which is hardwired into the building, and it would always come with a backup battery. That battery is there in case the unit should lose power and the unit unfortunately catch fire.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. If the landlord doesn't comply and we have to move due to payments being stopped, what happens if we can't find a place to live? This sounds like a tricky question that may be beyond the scope of our NSPIRE guidelines, but is there anything that we can say about landlord compliance, and if payments stop due to landlords being failing to be in compliance with NSPIRE guidelines?
Well, the process is if the unit failed inspection, they're given a time frame to correct the issue, and if the issue is not corrected, then half payments will stop, basically. And if the owners are not planning to correct the issue, then the tenant may request to move to get their voucher and search for another unit.
Thank you, Glenn. We touched on this a little earlier, but just to clarify, do smart smoke alarms need to have tamper-proof batteries? And could you give a brief description of what a tamper-proof battery is?
Yeah, I'll take this question. As of right now, no. A tamper-proof battery is not necessarily the correct phrasing. It would be a tamper-proof or tamper-resistant smoke detector that would be a built-in 10-year lithium-ion smoke detector. So after the 10 years and it expires, that smoke detector would be disposed of, because you can't get in it and you can't change it even if you wanted to. So normally those come in, so we were earlier asking smoke detector and carbon monoxide detectors. Now the most common on those are a combination of the two. And the newer ones are coming in the 10-year lithium ion sealed smoke detector. So you can't touch it. You buy it, install it, forget about it for 10 years, and then dispose of it and put in another one.
Mahalo, Stephen. And while we're on the subject, if they have a smoke detector in the unit that has a 9-volt battery, is that acceptable?
Yes, it's still acceptable up until December of this year. After that, we have to go to the 10-year lithium ion sealed detector. If it's not hardwired. If it's hardwired, then the 9-volt backup battery, it'll be in there, and yes, that'll be acceptable. But it has to be hardwired. Hardwired, the primary source of energy would be from the unit itself. Unless the unit's power fails, then the battery is just a backup. And that is in case the unit should come into distress if the electricity goes out, which is a very likely scenario being in Hawaii, that when we're having distress issues such as power outages, units are more likely to catch fire because of outside sources of illumination and heat.
Thank you, Stephen. We're getting a lot of questions about the smoke detector placement, and perhaps it would be worthwhile to touch on this a little bit. For the smoke detector on the wall, is it correct to say that it needs to be 4 inches from the wall, 4 inches down? Could we just briefly go over the smoke detector placement? Again, we'll place this on the website with pictures and graphics that will really help to describe this better. But could we just kind of verbally go over the smoke detector placement?
What I'll do is I'll refer this to Likeke, but just as a brief, all smoke detectors, when they're purchased, will have the exact information that we are posting on the inside of the smoke detector's instructions for location, so on and so forth. Likeke, can you briefly answer this question?
So, yes, um, as my supervisor did explain already, the location of the smoke detector is
Okay, maybe we can come back to this question. I'm not sure if it's just me, but it sounds like we're having some difficulty with your feed. So maybe we can come back to this question. Again, we'll post some more specific details on the website. Let's revisit this question in just a little bit. In the meantime, is there a way to test tamper-proof smoke detectors or the non-tampering smoke detectors?
I'll take the question. Yeah, short answer is yes. There should be a test button for the smoke detector and also if it is a combination unit, the CO detector. Yep, same thing as the old detectors will be the new. You
I
are able
appreciate
to
that.
test them.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Keke, it looked like your video was working a little better near the end of that. Do you want to give that another try, the brief description of smoke detector placement?
that good now?
You sound and look good, Keke.
Got it. Thank you. So, yeah, the 4 to 12 inches is the requirement. So when the smoke builds up inside of the unit, the alert goes off. You have time to get out of the house. So if you install it wrong, you won't have time to get out of your house. And yeah, so many things that come into play when you're installing the smoke detector, because you're talking about ceiling fans, the open windows, the open door. Just main thing is the 4 to 12 inches if you're on the wall to the top of the detector, and then 4 to 12 inches if you're on the ceiling from the nearest wall. Just stick to that.
I appreciate that, Keke. And we'll post some more specific information because it sounds like there are some qualifiers there. But 4 to 12 inches from the corner in either direction. So you have the corner, 4 to 12 inches from the wall, or 4 to 12 inches from the ceiling if it's on the wall. Sounds like that's the answer. The next question is about fire extinguishers. Are fire extinguishers required here in Hawaii?
Yes, they are required. I'll also give this one to Likeke. Only in certain circumstances. It's not for all units. It's only units that require them by state law. That a lot of times would be at low-rise apartment buildings and different high-rise buildings. Likeke, you want to touch more on this? We'll see if you're coming through though, okay?
Okay, good.
Sounds good, Keke.
So the fire extinguishers, you're not gonna see this problem in the single family dwellings or not too much in the duplexes. They are not required in those, but the high rises and the low rises, like how Mr. Rosa was saying, they are required by the federal law that they have to be inspected at least every year, and they should have an inspection tag, and the meter should read green every time we go out to inspect. And then there's actually a manufacturing date underneath the tank itself, and it cannot exceed over 12 years, and that's all in the NSPIRE standards as well.
Thank you, Keke.
If I can touch on that just real quick, just to add, even if the unit doesn't require a fire extinguisher, if the fire extinguisher is present, it will still need to meet all of the standards that Likeke just went over. I just wanted to add that.
I appreciate that, Stephen. So, in regards to smoke and the carbon monoxide detectors, what severity rating would smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detector deficiency fall under?
Severe, life-threatening.
Yeah, severe and life-threatening, that would be a 24 deficiency.
Got it. Is there a portal that we can use to keep up with rent changes, failed inspections, move-in approvals, Recently, we've not received notices in the mail, and there is a delay in email replies. They're wondering if there's some kind of portal that they can use.
Yes, we in the future we may have a portal. We're working on it right now, and we will inform the landlords once we have it up and running.
Great news. Thanks, Glenn. The next question is, will we be able to get one of those books to use for guidelines, or is it only for the inspectors? I think we touched on this before. If you go onto the HUD website, you can find all of these resources, including the checklist. But is there anything that we want to add to that?
Adam, you're exactly correct. All the information that we have, we download the same way the public would, so they would have the exact same information on their inspections anyway that we have.
Thanks, Stephen. And if everyone can direct their attention to the chat, I just posted the link to that HUD website if anybody wants to download the NSPIRE document and check it out for yourself. As Carrie mentioned, it is a lengthy document, but it's a digital document. So by using the Find feature on Windows devices, it's Control F. You can kind of search through the document, or you can skip ahead to the section that might be relevant to your particular questions. But also available on there, you can see what the checklist is if you wanted to go through the checklist yourself and kind of get a sense for your level of compliance. That is definitely worthwhile. We have a question. 3 bedrooms in this person's unit are sharing one hallway, so they're wondering how many smoke detectors do they need to install in that hallway?
That would be just one smoke detector would cover the 3 or 4 bedrooms. Yeah, if it's all connected to that one hallway. Now, should the unit be split, 2 bedrooms on one side with a little hallway and 1 bedroom on the other, that would require 2.
Thank you, Stephen. If a dwelling uses gas, do they have to have a carbon detector in the bedroom or just the kitchen where the gas unit is?
I would locate that particular detector in the hallway or the bedroom. Yeah. I'm sorry, living room. Hallway and living room.
Hallway and living room. Okay. The next question is, what is considered outside of the common area? Does that mean outside of the apartment building or unit itself?
I'll take this one. Inside, outside, and units. Inside refers to the common areas and building systems that can be found within the building interior, yet are not inside the unit. Unit means the unit. Outside refers to the building site, building exterior components, and any building systems located outside of the building or unit. There's the answer.
Got it. All right. Thanks, Carrie. So we had talked about life-threatening issues. Besides smoke detectors and fire extinguishers, what other issues, what are a few other examples of issues that would be considered life-threatening issues that require repair within 24 hours?
There are many, but one would be no electricity would be considered life-threatening.
Yeah, can we, would you like us to elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, maybe a few examples.
Okay. Likeke, can you elaborate a little bit more? I'll monitor.
Yeah, like Carrie was saying, just life-threatening issues. I mean, there's a huge list, especially with the new NSPIRE protocols and what they're asking for. But if you think about the basic stuff, no water, no electric, and then the smoke detectors itself, health and safety. But then there's other things in there, like if there's only one bathroom, the toilet is not operational. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that it just goes on and on into the severity of it. But the main things is the life threatening is the no water, no electric, and then just the safety for the tenant and then the residence itself.
Got it. Thanks, KK. So is there a difference between carports and closed garages in regards to carbon monoxide detectors?
I'll take this question. Yes, most definitely. Anytime we're in an enclosed space is where we're looking at the buildup of CO, carbon monoxide, where it can cause some damage. A garage would be a enclosed space connected to the home. Yeah. A carport is open, and that's what a carport is, and will allow wind and breeze to get through, and the carbon monoxide would not be a buildup issue. And also, if the garage itself was disconnected from the house, then the garage itself would need one, but not necessarily the home. So there is a lot that we need to look at when we do the inspections. They're not going to be one and the same for all houses with a carport, so to speak, all houses with a garage, all houses with gas burning appliances, so on and so forth. There will be a few minor variances in unit types. Okay.
For the carbon monoxide detectors, not all units are going to require them, as Steve and Lekeke were explaining. The units that require the carbon monoxide detector there are two types, right? One is the unit has a fuel burning appliance. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a gas burning appliance. It has a fuel burning appliance, which includes a chimney, like a fireplace. The other kind of unit that needs a carbon monoxide detector is one with an attached covered garage. So the garage is enclosed and it's attached to the dwelling area. So those are the two types.
Thanks, Carrie. What about lead paint? Are there any changes in NSPIRE related to lead paint?
No, they will continue to remain the same, and hopefully as time goes on, it becomes less and less.
Thanks, Stephen. I just wanted to note that we have about 15 minutes remaining in today's webinar, and we only have a few questions left, but if you have other questions that haven't already been answered, I know we've been covering a lot of subjects extensively, but be sure to put that in the chat. We'll try to get to everything today, but we have about 15 minutes remaining on today's scheduled webinar. The next question that I have is, sorry, I'm having a difficult time reading this one. I'm going to skip on to the next one. I'm just having a hard time reading this, the phrasing of this particular question. Could you please clarify the smoke detector standards needed to be done by December? You know, we've actually touched a lot on smoke detector standards. Maybe this would be a better, you may want to actually just check the NSPIRE guidelines if you have any other specific questions related to smoke detectors. We spent a lot of time on smoke detectors today.
Thank you.
So
And we sent
that
that
to add?
Yeah, I thank you very much. And we did send out a flyer with actually a drawing and detailed information. And again, on the installation of the smoke detectors, they will come with it. Thank you, Adam.
Let me just say, in general, as of right now, the requirements for the tamper-proof smoke detectors are they're not in effect. When that part of the standard goes into effect, the inspectors will start testing for it, but they're not testing for it now.
Got it. I appreciate that. I think I figured out the last question. I was just having a hard time with the phrasing of it. They were wondering if new developments, new buildings that were constructed within the last couple of years, they were wondering if those buildings were given these NSPIRE guidelines when they started construction, or is it kind of taking effect immediately? They're saying buildings that were built within the last couple of years or so.
I'll take that one. So the NSPIRE guideline, the NSPIRE standards, among other things, what they do is they bring NSPIRE into compliance with the International Fire Code. So in some states and in some districts, the International Fire Code was already the law of the land. So in places where that was the case, then there's no change between NSPIRE and local ordinances. In Hawaii already had a stricter standard for smoke detectors. So it may be that new buildings are already in compliance with the law. But the reason HUD made these regulations is so that there's a uniform minimum standard across the country. So like if Hawaii has stricter standards and like Iowa has looser standards, now with NSPIRE, it's going to be one standard that's equally strict. But from my understanding is that most new constructions are already in compliance.
Got it. Thanks, Carrie. That's a good point. A lot of this, it may seem a little bit heavy. You showed that whole book that was so thick, but it's important to note that a lot of this have already been doing for a long time. The next question is about asbestos. Are there any new considerations regarding asbestos in this new guideline?
Short answer for that would be no.
Appreciate it, Stephen. The next question is, what about sprinkler systems in units? Are there any changes to guidelines on sprinkler systems?
No, there's been no changes. Sprinkler systems are actually to go above and beyond what we are requiring. But if the buildings are built that way, then they would be checked, but they actually exceed the standards that we're looking for.
Thanks, Stephen. The next question is about fire extinguishers. Are they required to be signed off monthly by maintenance staff? Is that a requirement?
No, not monthly. They're required to be checked and certified every 2 years by a professional. Normally a company will do it.
Got it. The next question we have here is so I guess to clarify about fire extinguishers, does each Section 8 unit need to have a fire extinguisher, or is it okay for there to just be one in the common area of the building? Does it need to be in each unit?
No, it would basically follow the National Fire Code, which would require the building to have it in their particular locations. We haven't had any problems with that when inspecting buildings that already have them in there, and they're all located in the proper areas. So no, not in each individual. We do have waivers that were out there. I don't think they're there anymore. That's with buildings. Let me give you just a quick example that the fire extinguishers on the outsides were being stolen or vandalized beyond the control of the landlords. And the waivers that we gave them were that each individual unit had to have a fire extinguisher in it. But those are rare. I don't think they're existing anymore, but those are concerns or situations we would take a look at on smaller buildings.
Appreciate it, Stephen. So in the NSPIRE standards, it has something called a call for aid system standard. Call for aid system standard. Could somebody please explain what that is, and will the landlord need to provide this?
I will pass this question on to Likeke, but it's a relatively simple question. He'll take care of it. Go ahead, Likeke.
So the call for aid system is usually located in the high rises with mostly our kupuna, and they are not allowed to, majority of them actually tie up the cord because it's on the ground or near the ground. So if they have the call aid system in place, it needs to be working and it cannot be tied up, because if you fall down, you got to be able to reach it. And if it's tied up, you can't reach it and you can't call for help. So it's a life and safety. But yeah, the simplest way, just You just got to untie it when we're there. And we usually work it out when we're there talking to them and explaining the situation and the severity of it if they ever did need that call 8 system. And then they understand and they just untie it and then just let it go.
We really appreciate the helpfulness of our Section 8 inspectors with this. Thank you so much. As a property manager, does Section 8 call, do people, the staff workers from Section 8 call and email if there are any items or deficiency that needs 24 hours to correct? Are they made aware of that? And how are they notified?
So usually the property managers, they're located at the low rises, mid rise, and then the high rises. That's usually when we come into that. And depending on the inspector itself, they can take it out of their way to go and locate the property manager if they're there, and then let them know of the action that is required for them to be aware of, not to fix, because it always comes down to the landlord and to the tenant's responsibility. But because our tenants are in place of these high rises, it all comes into factor of how we run our inspections on the inside, meaning the common areas, how Carrie Conachero was talking about. It's like the wash areas, the elevators, and all the swimming pool. Anywhere that the tenant can go into, that's where we have to go. So if there's anything, any deficiencies, then we have to address it. But yeah, depending on the inspector, we usually address it with a resident manager who's ever there. Yes.
Thanks, Lee KK. So for non-threatening issues, other than the ones that require the 24-hour response, they're wondering for those other issues, how long does the landlord or property manager have to correct the discrepancy? Or does it vary depending on the issue?
I think I'll give this one to Kerry. Kerry has the 4 standards that he can talk upon. Kerry, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure.
You can take it, Kerry, if you want me to.
So severe deficiencies, 24 hours or 30 days, moderate deficiencies within 30 days, and like low severity deficiencies within 60 days. It's hard to generalize because when you read the standard, there are literally hundreds of deficiencies that the standard lists, and each one has a different time frame where you have to do the correction. But in general, the general rule is if it's severe, life-threatening, within 24 hours, there has to be some remediation. Maybe not necessarily correction, but there has to be an attempt to redress the problem. For less severe deficiencies, it's going to be 30 to 60 days.
For an hour.
Thanks, Carrie. And it looks like we have time for about one more question, and then I will I'll provide you contact information if you have specific questions that weren't answered by this. I think our panelists did an excellent job kind of touching over the large picture issues. Again, this is a huge document, the NSPIRE document. So if you have specific questions, your answers are in that document. And I'll send around the link again and make sure to post it on our website. So that we can make sure to answer your questions that way. So the last question that we're going to answer here today is, if the tenant doesn't pay their electricity bill and service is suspended, is that a tenant issue or is that a landlord responsibility? If it's for tenants, how do landlords proceed to rectify that issue?
Okay, so it kind of explains itself. If the tenant is responsible for covering the utility, it would be a tenant issue, and the no electricity would be a 24-hour notice. So yes, it would be the tenant's responsibility to keep that electricity on and flowing to the unit. I think I answered the question. If I didn't, please rephrase it, give it to me again, and I'll put more light on it.
Adam, let me take a stab at this as well. The responsibility for the electricity is assigned in the lease. So there are leases where the family is responsible for providing the electricity. If that's what the lease specifies, then it's the tenant's responsibility to provide the electricity. If, on the other hand, the landlord is responsible for the electricity and there's no electricity, it's the landlord's responsibility. So responsibility will be determined by who's responsible for providing the utility under the lease.
Got it. Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to all of our panelists today for their expertise and for sharing their knowledge about the new NSPIRE guidelines. And of course, thank you to all of you who signed on to today's webinar presentation to learn more about your rights and responsibilities under the NSPIRE program. I'd like to thank you all for your attendance and participation. We hope that you found this information useful and helpful as you plan for the repairs and maintenance of your properties. If you have questions that weren't answered today during the webinar presentation, and we had a lot of very specific questions that may not be applicable to the population at large that we didn't get to touch on today, if you have specific questions, please feel free to contact us. We have a phone number. It's our NSPIRE hotline, and you can reach us at 808-768-7066. That's our NSPIRE hotline, 808-768-7066. And if you prefer to email your question, we have an email address, and that's hcvinspect@honolulu.gov. That's hcvinspect@honolulu.gov. If you have any other questions or need any more information, those are the best ways to get in touch with us. And of course, be sure to check back at our website, www.honolulu.gov/DCS/NSPIRE. That's NSPIRE. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. This webinar will be posted to that website, as I mentioned. Be sure to check out the NSPIRE document at the HUD website to look and see if the answer to your specific question is included in that PDF document. I'd like to thank you all for being here today. Please stay safe and have a great day. Mahalo.